1st of Brun. I woke this morning to an intense throbbing pain in my upper arm from my encounter with the wolves yesterday, but I was very glad for the smell of a hearth and the bearskin rug I had slept on. Vrakos was already up and moving around and gently humming so as to wake me, but not unpleasantly. He checked my arm and was not entirely happy with the work he had done the day before, and proceeded to re-clean and wrap it. Without the shock of the experiences from yesterday, there was a new feeling of awkwardness that I wished would go away. I hated feeling my shoulders holding themselves gawkily just because another person was near me. This man was full of fatherly ease and care, and my skin responded by objecting to being touched. To break the quiet, I asked him questions. I had not thought my mind was in a maudlin state, but I found myself asking if he had ever worried that he might die and leave his child fatherless. The question hung in the air like a bum cord from a lute. After a little thought, he said, "Yes, misfortune can strike anyone, and I thank Essian for my favoured life. I always hoped I would make a life that would not leave my loved ones ruined if I should die." I asked him if he succeeded, and he nodded. "Much of that is down to my dear partner Robin being much better than me at most things." And he smiled softly, and my heart ached. As I readied myself to leave, he gave me a carefully wrapped sandwich of beef and mustard. Again, I found myself awkward and stiffening my face against emotion. I told him it was too much on top of everything else, and he said it was the last of a good cow, and he will be returning home with a great deal of deer and pheasant, so it was no bother. Generosity comes to Vrakos as easily as an intake of breath. A mean, sour part of me wondered if it was wisdom or idiocy that made him this way, and then I cursed myself for the thought. The wind was cold and brisk, but the sun was bright and birds sang incessantly as I stood on the doorstep of the lodge. If I was a different person, I would find a way of telling him what it means to me, what he did. Not just that he saved my life, but that he's a good person, and that they are few and far between. And going a long time without meeting one can be hard on the soul. No, that's a selfish point of view. I'd want to tell him that I hoped he and his family live a long and happy life. That has too much weight to it. I would want him to feel a fraction of the warmth he made me feel, and I would hug him like two men who respect each other. But instead, I stared at him while he fixed a padlock to the door. I thought about putting my hand on his shoulder, but didn't. He turned and said, "Well, good luck, young man. May our paths cross again in more favourable circumstances." I nodded and turned away without saying a thing. I am so wretched I could not even croak out a thank you. After walking a few moments, I broke into a run and didn't stop until my clod legs would not any more. As I sit now at the base of a moss-covered rocky knoll, I hope he went home and told his partner about the silly little unappreciative boy he met, how sullen and strange he was. I hope they laugh as he tells of my spindly arms and how they would not have fed one wolf, and how I was incapable of cleaning and dressing a simple cut, and how I don't know how to make tea, and how buttered bread brought me to the brink of tears, and most of all, I hope any story he tells is punctuated by my searing ingratitude. They will probably kiss him lightly and remind him that there are some strange people out there, and he was good to show pity to that odd boy. Even that would be a kindness. He will probably not speak of me at all, and again I will leave no ripple in my wake. I ate half of my sandwich and wrapped the other half back up, and found myself thinking of when I staggered into another city as a child, newly alone and starving. I was so small I don't have sharp memories of it, but I do remember that my feet were painfully swollen from walking, and were not calloused yet from years of being barefoot. I did not fully understand that I was now parentless and homeless. I had the faith of a well-loved son, that if I found people, I would be cared for until my parents came back for me, arms outstretched in trust. I did not know that I was a walking sob story. I did not know how many lessons I was about to learn in the ways of the world. I did not know that I needed to become secretive and cunning and invisible. Second of Brun. I am in the city of Ballymore at last. The morning brought a light fog that was quickly brushed away by the sun, and I passed through a small town, the kind that often occurs close to bigger cities. 2 taverns, and I bet if I had gone in, one would be the sort that survives on covert meetings of those that reside in the city. A stable that may well sell riding farn with saddles for a few less gold than Ballymore proper, and filled with people who have chips on their shoulders about city folk and country folk alike. I did not dawdle, but pushed through, and I was barely out of the town when I saw the edges of the city. It seemed alarmingly small at first. No city walls of any kind, just buildings, and as I got closer I realised that the city drapes itself over 2 hills and the valley in between, and it is wrapped around a bay with a harbour. I knew Ballymore would be different from my home because it does not have canal streets and gondola traffic as Arroway Haven does. But even more of it feels different, and for reasons I cannot understand. This place has taller buildings. Every one seems to tower over the one next to it, and yet the streets feel wide and light. The stone is a bright white, and the shutters are mostly pale creamy colours. There seem to be no alleys or streets in the city that is sheltered from the sun or coastal wind. As I walked into the city from the west, I saw it to my left. The school. Calach Iolas. At last. It loomed large, breathtaking in its size and structure. It seemed to be an arrangement of circles, round towers with disc-shaped balconies, and as I walked further in I got a perspective of it from the bay. There are buildings that jut from the cliffs in semicircles. Whole floating wings splay themselves out from the top of larger halls with no regard for gravity, and everything was more of the pristine white walls and orange roof tiles. In my excitement, I wanted to walk right in, but I knew I had to bide my time. I have 8 days until the students arrive, and I want to have snuck in and made myself accustomed to the place before that happens. There is so much to do that I could not have planned before I got here and got a lay of the land. If I'm to pull this off, I need to work swiftly and cleverly. I spent the rest of the afternoon and evening walking the streets and understanding its layout. The areas that have fragrant jasmine draping from the dwellings, and the areas that do not hide the smell of shit and rotten fish. The custers here patrol with only a short baton swinging from their belt, and they do not prevent you from going into areas that you clearly do not live. Locals talk to them freely, and I saw one custer breaking up a drunken fight outside a tavern, and then diffuse the aggravation verbally. I sent a happy prayer out that if I was caught stealing, I may not get an automatic beating. I slipped into my practiced game of being invisible, not magically, but just being unnoticed, becoming part of a crowd, doing nothing unusual, removing my stoop, gait and mannerisms and forcing neutrality into the way I walked. Over the years I've refined this, so I can now walk next to people without them even noticing I am in stride with them. I can even sit at a table of people without them looking at me and seem to an onlooker like I'm part of their conversation. I've always thought it's my greatest magic trick, and it requires no magic at all. Once the sun went down, I went about the business of scaling a building and getting roofside. Quite a feat when the buildings are so tall. I slipped a few times and once landed hard on my bad arm. But eventually I found myself stepping out on tiles and looking for a good spot to sleep for the night. The best spots are always where several slanted roofs meet and create a concealed dip. Even better if there's a little overhang to tuck into. In Arroway, these spots are nearly always fiercely guarded by one street rat or another. But here, I found one after a little while, and though I found a chicken bone and some dripped wax, no one came to claim it. It is a bright, cloudless night, and the moon is full, so I can see clearly all round me, but the cold is hard to get used to. Tomorrow, I will need to get to the work of stealing. It will not be easy. I'll need spell components and paper, so as to start a new spellbook from memory. There are other, easier things as well, like lifting some candles from taverns, and a quill, and maybe even some dice, so I can fleece some money from the students who will probably be terrible push players. But most of all, I'll need to start watching the comings and goings of the school and plan a way of getting in, and working out how I can hide myself more regularly. A place where I can tuck myself away and sleep at night, and then, in the morning, slip in with the students again and file into classes with them. I am glad I can hear the far-off sound of the sea in the bay. It is the one home comfort that will ease my sprinting mind into sleep.
Saint